Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Blast. It is Monday, the 22nd of September, all day. You join myself and Mr. Michael Brown, where we will be teeing up, well, first off, giving a quick look back at what happened at the end of last week, the arse end of last week, and teeing up what's going to be happening today. And as it's Monday, the week ahead. But before we do, I'll get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed in the session or podcast, whatever we want to call it. Is trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed Mr. Michael Brown. How are you, Mr. Michael Brown?
Yeah, it's very good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Not too bad, although decidedly crisp morning.
Oh,
I've had
very.
to crack out the fleece line gilet this morning.
Oh, get you. No, I did
I'm
walk
only mentioning
outside.
that because Mr. Rich Bernard is on the call this morning, and
There we go.
we know he likes a gilet.
I did grab my coffee earlier on this morning, walked straight out into the back garden, and walked straight back in.
Yes,
This is
it's
far too cold for me.
most definitely not a day for drinking outside, that's for sure.
No, unlike Friday, which we had a very pleasant evening. But anyway, enough about
Indeed,
us and our
yes.
social life. What's been occurring?
Yeah, let's get on to the markets. Frankly, not a lot, to be
Good, and
completely
that's
honest
the
with
end of
you.
the show.
It was a decidedly sluggish end to the week for the financial markets. Not really much by way of impactful data or news flow as the week wrapped up on Friday. Although in terms of the price action, it was very much a case of more of the same, with equities continuing to gain ground, the S&P and the Nasdaq notching fresh record highs to end the week. The Treasury curve continuing to steepen, with the long end leading losses. The dollar trading broadly firmer against most of its major peers, with the dollar index up towards the 98 mark this morning. And we've also seen gold continuing to print new record highs this morning, trading north of
Always believe in your
$3,710
soul.
an ounce.
You have the power to know. Sorry, go on.
Do you know what? I preferred the Spandau Ballet version, but yeah, it was a good effort. Sort of 7 out of 10.
It's one of those. Who sings that then, right? Oh, Spandau. Let's leave it to them.
Yeah, I think we probably should. In terms of drivers from Friday, I guess the most significant headlines came from this telephone call between President Trump and President Xi. I will read out the sort of readouts that we have from that from both sides. The Chinese saying that the call was a pragmatic, positive and constructive discussion, where President Xi asked the United States to refrain from taking unilateral trade measures and asked the United States to avoid undermining the outcomes from recent talks. Very much in line with what you would expect. President Trump, meanwhile, commenting on Truth Social, said that the call was very productive, that progress was made on the approval of a TikTok deal, that he will meet President Xi at the APEC summit, that he will go to China in the early part of next year, and that President Xi will come to the US at, quote, an appropriate time. That basically means Xi really doesn't want to go to the US, because otherwise he would have committed to a date for that visit. But frankly, not really anything new from that telephone call. Nothing impactful there whatsoever, although I guess at the margin you could say that at least there's been no further escalation in tensions between the two, but I don't think that's a game changer in any way, shape or form. Moving on from that, of course, the Fed's blackout period came to an end on Friday. We heard from 2026.
Boo.
Yeah, quite. We heard from 2026 voter Neil Kashkari. He was talking about how the rapid slide in employment, not entirely sure what he's looking at because employment is actually increasing, but never mind, is more worrying than a spike in inflation. He was also saying that he sees the neutral rate at 3.1%. Of course, he votes next year, not this year.
Just on
Hello.
Kashkari, for those not, as boring as us, it's worth pointing out that Kashkari is always completely the opposite. He's completely wrong most of the time, but then when he does flip to then get on board finally with what the consensus or what's actually happening, it's normally almost to the day that whatever is happening reverses.
Yes.
He seems to be at the polar end of any kind of discussion or any kind of element. It's a phenomenal hit rate, which he's got, to be fair. Because he was banging the drum about no inflation for years, and then when he finally said, actually, I think there is inflation, it fell off a cliff. So just one to bear in mind with Kashkari.
Yeah, that is a very good point. We also heard on Friday from new governor and Trump puppet Steve Moran, who unsurprisingly confirmed that the low dot on the dot plot was him. Don't think we really needed him to confirm that, to be honest. I think we'd already worked that one out. He was also waffling about how he doesn't see any material inflation from tariffs, how rates are quite far from neutral. I had a bit of a heated debate with someone on Friday about this. I don't think anyone who knows anything about financial markets gives two shits what Steve Moran has to say, to be completely honest with you. We know he's a dove. We know he's going to vote for low rates. We know he's going to say what Trump wants him to say, and he's leaving the Fed in January. So quite frankly, he's just basically boosting his own profile and his own ego by going on television. I don't think he's going to be moving markets anytime soon.
Michael, remind us, when are you on Bloomberg to buy again?
Well, I might move markets, mate. So, you never know. I reckon there's more chance of me moving the market than him, to be honest. Sticking with the Fed, we heard from the Supreme Court at the back end of last week. They have asked Fed Governor Lisa Cook to respond to some of their questions by Thursday. That's Thursday this week. And of course, that pertains to the ongoing case around whether or not President Trump has the ability to fire her for cause over these allegations of mortgage fraud. Lastly, on the Fed, Steve Bannon, anyone remember him? He used to be a White House advisor during Trump's first term, and well, I'm not sure what he's doing these days, to be honest, but he's coming up with stupid ideas. That's one thing he's doing, because he said he thinks that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent should serve jointly as Treasury Secretary and Fed Chair on an interim basis until the end of the midterm elections. Because this call is only half an hour long, we don't have time to discuss why that would be so stupid, but it's a relief that the White House said Trump is not considering following Bannon's suggestion. Speaking of Trump, his lawsuit against the New York Times, of course, he was suing them for $15 billion or something stupid, basically for saying things he didn't want them to say. That has been dismissed because the lawsuit was too long. It seems Trump could do with a copy editor. Moving into the tech space, Oracle, they are in talks with Meta on a cloud computing deal that could be worth $20 billion. Oracle seemed to be a bit of a market darling at the moment. Obviously, they had that big upside surprise on guidance a couple of weeks ago. They're getting their fingers in the pie in terms of TikTok, and now they might be doing this big deal with Meta. Sticking in the tech space, Apple, OpenAI apparently raiding Apple for, quote, hardware design and supply chain talent. This is as OpenAI is looking to potentially produce a device of their own in late 2026 or early 2027. We will see how that one goes. Also, in terms of Apple, they're reportedly hurrying along to boost production of the iPhone 17. Apparently that is outselling the iPhone 17 Pro and the iPhone Air because it's cheaper, basically. So Apple sales doing well, but at the lower end, which is noteworthy. Speaking of sales, we had some retail sales data out of Canada on Friday. This is July data where sales fell by 0.8% on a monthly basis, bang in line with expectations. And lastly, a couple of headlines just from here in the UK before I hand back to you, Ryan. Shawbrook Group, for those who are unfamiliar, they're one of these sort of new neobanks here in the UK. Apparently they're in talks with investors about a possible London IPO. That IPO, though, has now been delayed until 2026 because of uncertainty surrounding the budget, which is, of course, on the 26th of November. And on the tone of the government and of the budget, the government have approved the construction of a second runway at Gatwick Airport. The news report suggesting that flights could take off from that runway before the next general election. That means they won't, because this will inevitably be delayed. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, coming out from under a rock this morning to say that this is part of the government's promise to kickstart the economy, and that they are backing the builders, not the blockers, to build an economy that works for working people. What a load of absolute nonsense.
Yeah, just on this, it's worth noting that unlike, say, an extra runway at Heathrow, this Gatwick runway already does technically exist. It's currently used for emergencies. So hopefully that means that, it doesn't take so long to get stuff going. But we know how infrastructure projects work in the UK. So yeah, if you are looking to take up. So maybe book it in for your 2035 holiday.
Yeah, the other thing is, as a man of Kent, or a Kentish man, I'm not sure which one I am actually, it depends on which side of the Medway you're born.
I tell you what, it starts with a similar sounding letter and it ends in a T, but and it's got an N in it.
Anyway, as a Kentish man, or man of Kent,
You
whichever it
can.
is, there is a lot of local opposition to this actually taking place,
Yeah,
basically in terms of noise complaints, as you would expect. So although the government have given the go-ahead, I wouldn't be surprised if, this does run into some roadblocks, whether it be in terms of
of course it
construction,
will.
whether it be in
Of
terms of
course it will.
local complaints, or with this being the UK, they'll probably find a population of rare newts somewhere that costs £10 billion to be moved.
All that's guaranteed is it's going to be a turbulent time ahead.
Oh, dearie me. Well, I've made a smooth landing with my first segment, so why don't you take off and give us the overnight news roundup?
Oh, boss. Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Michael Brown. So as usual, reading out some choice roundup of Zach's overnight news headlines. Do follow Zach for that. Do follow the Substack as well, etc., etc. Starting off in macro space. Japan's leadership race sparks market focus. Japan's ruling party leadership race formally kicked off on Monday under close market scrutiny. Weekend polls show a split between general public support. Takeshi leads, not the guy with the castle, leads 28% to 24% over Koizumi. The LDP supporter preference, Koizumi, leads 41 to 24%. Koizumi pledged to revitalise Japan's economy by boosting wages and productivity, saying he hopes the BOJ works in lockstep with government for stable prices and solid growth. Hedge funds are betting on more yen weakness, while asset managers maintain the bullish positions. Trump's tech visa bombshell reshapes global talent. The tech sector rushed to warn H-1B visa employees against foreign travel after Trump imposed $100,000 application fee on new visas. I think new visas here was a critical one because there was a lot of confusion over the weekend how it was firstly worded, that they thought it applied to any visa, a H-1B visa that had already been issued, which is why you have Microsoft, Google, Meta, etc. basically you're begging their employees to get back to into the UK before this came into effect, and also telling anyone that was about to board a plane to get off. And there are some scenes online about people like basically stopping planes from taking off because they needed to leave the aircraft ASAP. But it looks like, as this says, that it's only the new visas that are going to be applied.
There was a lot of confusion about that, because as you say, on I think it was Friday when this was announced, Howard Lutnick was standing there, his oleaginous self in the Oval Office.
Good word.
And he was saying this applies to all visas, which the White House, as you said, then very quickly clarified that actually, no, it's just new ones. Lutnick also said, I think 5 times in one sentence, that this is an annual $100,000 that has to be paid, only for the White House 18 hours later to say, no, it's not annual, it's just a one-off fee.
Well, we know why. We know why, right? It blatantly was set up to be all visas, and
then they pulled a massive U-turn
and every year. And then they obviously had a lot of phone calls from a lot of CEOs of Google and Meta, and everyone else has probably called up Trump straight away on the bat phone and said,
"What the fuck are you doing,
Orange man? What the fuck are you doing? This is going to really screw us, and also it's just going to drive really, really good talent to other places, maybe even somewhere like the UK."
Yeah.
So that's exactly what's happened. It's very clear from that because it was, as you said, Lutnick was clearly saying this was every visa and annual, and that it's been walked back when the panics really hit. But anyway, China's biggest tech companies, they're set for a modest boost as the move is expected to slow Chinese tech worker flow into Silicon Valley, encouraging more to stay home. Indian rupee faces additional underperformance pressure from the visa changes. That's all about remittance. Oh, I can't even say it. What's the word for me?
I don't know. What are you on about?
Remittances.
Oh, remittances.
Where they send money. Yeah, where they send money back.
Right.
That's why the rupee's facing a bit of a underperformance on the back of this. US-China relations show mixed signals. A rare US House delegation visited Beijing for the first time since 2019, telling Premier Li that both superpowers need to, quote, break the ice and set up engagement. However, House China Committee leaders called for the investigation into Chinese manufacturer Ancar for unfair pricing and possible tariff evasions. The Trump administration expects to collect multi-billion-dollar fees from TikTok's US operations takeover, while Lacan and Rupert Murdoch potentially joining the investor team. European fiscal crisis deepens. You can two guesses that it starts with France here. France's credit rating was downgraded for a second time in a week by Morningstar DBRS, cutting to AA amid prolonged political crisis. Italy won its first Fitch upgrade since 2021 to BBB+, rewarding deficit cutting efforts. And the ECB officials remain divided on policy direction, with some tolerating sub 2% inflation while others call for December rate cuts. Before I move away from Europe, the Netherlands finance minister declared the EU's next budget proposal, quote, dead on arrival, unquote. So bullish times for the EU there. China floods system with holiday cash. China kept benchmark lending rates unchanged for a fourth consecutive month, but dusted off liquidity instruments unused for 8 months, pumping nearly 300 billion yuan, which is 42 billion in real money, dollars, into the banking system ahead of the global week holidays. Beijing unveiled a Stargate of China plan to challenge US AI supremacy through better data center oversight. Overseas funds, they've also offloaded Chinese sovereign bonds in August, the lowest level in almost 5 years. Geopolitical news, starting off with NATO. They trigger emergency over Russian airspace violations. Estonia is asking NATO allies for extra Baltic air defence after Russia's third airspace violation this month. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting as Estonia triggered Article 4. Trump, he's renewed calls for Europeans to stop buying oil from Russia while the EU considers trade measures targeting remaining Russian oil imports via the Druzhba pipeline to Hungary and Slovakia. Just off this as well, we've also heard that the Pentagon is kind of withholding or limiting some supplies to Eastern Europe. Potentially this is kind of looking to be a bit of a stick to the carrot of stopping all Russian crude imports, but
Yes.
we'll have a look and see how that develops this week. Middle East, a diplomatic earthquake. The UK, Australia and Canada announced formal recognition of a Palestinian state, marking a significant Western policy shift after 2 years of Gaza war. This reflects growing global dissatisfaction with Israel's conduct. Moving over to Asia, security tensions rise. North Korea's Kim Jong-un said he wouldn't avoid US talks if Washington stops demanding nuclear disarmament, but vowed never to... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, well, what Kim Jong-un is doing there is playing Donald Trump at his own game, where you say, yes, I will talk to you, but here is a ridiculous demand that I know you will never agree to.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. He's just dying for some basketball player, to go over. Who did he have last night?
Dennis Rodman, I think it was, wasn't it?
Dennis Rodman. Yeah. So he's just looking for someone else famous to go over and give him a quick one-on-one. Kim Jong-un,
I didn't have Kim Jong-un down as a basketball player. I don't think he's got quite the typical physique for the NBA.
No, I think I could potentially take him in a game, to be honest, and that's saying something. With my dunking skills. Kim Jong-un has vowed to never abandon nuclear weapons, as you would expect. Moving over to South America, Venezuelan President Maduro wrote directly to Trump, calling for talks to diffuse tensions. Taiwan polls show 50% public concern about TSMC becoming US SMC, with scholars saying Americanization might already be reality. Equity names, pharma M&A heats up in weight loss race. Pfizer is closing in on a potential $7.3 billion takeover of anti-obesity drug developer Metsera, marking its first big deal in 2 years. It seeks a foothold in the lucrative weight loss market. Meanwhile, Roche, they announced its investigational Giredestrant. I can't pronounce that. Main goals in late-stage breast cancer trials, which sounds like good news. NVIDIA ecosystem expands rapidly. NVIDIA supplier Ibiden plans to expand AI chip substrate production to 5 facilities by March 2026, expanding demand to nearly double this fiscal year. Reports suggest NVIDIA is fostering its own robo-taxi project, potentially announcing an upcoming all-hands meeting. Broadcom could become TSMC's third largest customer by 2026, possibly taking second place from NVIDIA. Memory chip sector surge. Samsung shares jumped over 5% after winning NVIDIA approval for advanced memory chips, marking a breakthrough for the Korean tech leader. Samsung notified customers of DRAM price increases of up to 30%, and NAND flash up 10% in Q4, so chip market going bid here. TSMC's latest N3P process commands a 20% price premium, with 2 nanometer expected to cost over 50% more than the N3P. So chips are going bid. And finally, from me, before I hand back to the big man, Buffett's global reshuffling. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway fully exited Chinese automaker BYD after a 17-year investment that grew 20-fold, or over 20-fold, while becoming a major shareholder in Japan's Mitsui & Co. trading house. And that's it from me. Back to you in the studio.
Good stuff. Thank you, as always, Ryan. In terms of today and the week ahead, then, to be honest, it is a much lighter data docket this week than we had last week, which isn't particularly difficult given how chaotic the last few days have been. In terms of today, there's really nothing of any particular note on the calendar. We do have some activity data from the Chicago Fed at 1:30 and some consumer confidence stats out of the Eurozone at 3, but they're not going to move the needle especially much. We do have a ton of central bank speakers, though. We're due to hear from the Fed's Miran, Barkin, Hammack, Museum and Williams, ECB's Nagel and Lane, BOE's Bailey and Hill as we move through the day today. I think those remarks from Bank of England Governor Bailey might actually be the most interesting if he does touch on the policy outlook, given how markets still seem far too hawkish in terms of the BOE policy path moving forwards. Looking ahead to the remainder of the week, just to go day by day. Tomorrow, we've got a policy decision due from the Riksbank in Sweden. They're set to hold rates steady at 2%. We also get the latest round of flash PMI figures from pretty much everywhere. In terms of the Eurozone, the composite output metric, that's seen holding broadly steady at 51.1 in September. Here in the UK, the composite metric's seen pulling back a little bit to 53 from a prior 53.5. Another busy day of speakers, highlighted by Fed Chair Powell, who'll be speaking late tomorrow afternoon London time. And we also on Tuesday get earnings after the close from Micron, which is potentially one worth watching for any of the chip or semiconductor focused folk. Into Wednesday, we've got CPI stats due from Australia. Headline CPI seen rising to 2.9 from a prior 2.8% in August. Although do recall, of course, that for whatever weird reason, as you move through the quarter, the Aussie CPI basket tilts increasingly towards services and away from goods. So you do tend to see inflation rise as the quarter progresses, and then it all gets smoothed out in the quarterly stats, which is just a really weird way of doing things, but there we are. Also on Wednesday, we have the latest IFO sentiment stats out of Germany, new home sales from the States, and a 5-year Treasury auction. Into Thursday, the Swiss National Bank, they will probably keep rates unchanged at 0%, but they won't rule out a return to negative rates if that becomes necessary. A few US releases on Thursday as well, including the final read on second quarter GDP, set to be unrevised at 3.3% on an annualized quarter-on-quarter basis. Also durable goods orders, existing home sales, and the weekly jobless claims figures, where the continuing claims print will pertain to the September non-farm payrolls survey week. And of course, that September jobs report is due next Friday. Another busy day of Fed speakers on Thursday as well, with 7 members of the FOMC due to make remarks. And then we also got a 7-year Treasury auction on Thursday as well. And then into Friday, we get Ryan's preferred economic data release, which is the Tokyo CPI stats out of Japan. We get the Fed's preferred inflation metric, which is the core PCE price index. That's expected to have held steady at 2.9% on a year-on-year basis in August. We also get GDP stats for July out of Canada. And final consumer sentiment stats for September from the University of Michigan on Friday afternoon as well. And of course, in addition to all of that, focus remains on any trade or tariff related developments, geopolitical news amid those simmering tensions on the NATO border in Eastern Europe, and of course on the Fed as well, with that case around Governor Cook continuing to simmer away. And of course also on the Fed, now that we're out of the pre and post meeting blackout period, interviews for Fed chair are likely to resume. Besant did say that those on the FOMC would be interviewed after the blackout comes to an end. So potentially some news on that front this week as well. But for the time being, that is all from me.
Fantastic, Mr. Michael Brown. Thank you as always. And we are at least about 5 steps nearer to getting these put up on podcast, thanks to our dear friend Tom Wiseman and Chloe, who has been working over a little bit over the weekend on this. So hopefully, if I can shake the boys in Nepal and Saurav, etc., we can get this going this week, which would be fantastic.
Don't say that again.
No, sorry. Shake the boys in. Oh yeah, okay. Phrasing. Phrasing. Anyway, on that note,
Ryan's going to get a knock on the door now.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. We have got all hands meeting in about an hour, so yeah, great one. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening. Michael, pleasure as always. And whatever you're doing today, keep it tight, stay safe. We have got the crypto blast as well later this today at 1 p.m. UK time, and the grain market blast at 2:45 UK time. So do tune in for that if you can. But that's it from us. Goodbye.